Welcome to ThriveCast. We have a unique guest with us, Sam Mallikarjunan. I love his name because I have a good friend whose last name is also Mallikarjunan, and I'm very sad to see that he's put a Sam in front of it. But that's the story for the next time. A quick introduction: if you don't know much about Sam, I got to know about this morning as well. He's a marathon runner. He just completed his Boston Marathon. He's a LinkedIn learning instructor, and that's the first way I got connected with him when he put up a LinkedIn creative videos around how to use AI. So I became fond of him. As he was speaking through this, I was able to go connect with many things. He's also a co-founder for a previous startup, and it's very rare that I see LinkedIn learning instructors who have been a co-founder before, and that gives a lot more credence to Sam. And over a period of time, I've realized a lot of things about Sam. He has spent a long career at HubSpot and various head of roles, head of marketing, head of growth, head of new incubation businesses, faculty chair and instructor at Harvard University. So Sam, welcome. I'm so proud to host you. Let me know
if I'm... Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for probably being the only person I'm going to talk to all week who says my name right.
Well, Sam Mallikarjunan for all of you. So Sam, maybe if you could tell a little bit about yourself, outside of the things that I just talked about, and your role at Agent.ai. So this is a new business that you're now connected with. So tell us a little more about what is Agent.ai, what does Sam Mallikarjunan do in general?
Yeah, it's kind of come full circle. So I grew up in Cape Canaveral, Florida Space Coast near Kennedy Space Center. Ended up going into, I had an AM FM talk radio show about cigars and scotch, which is how I got into marketing. There is a story there. All the cigar companies wanted help building their websites. Fine, I could do that. Then they wanted help monetizing the websites. So I Googled, how do you make money using websites? That's how I discovered HubSpot. I had no college degree, no real experience. So I built a site called hiremehubspot.com and ran ads targeting their employees, because there's only like 150 people at the time. To register for the free webinar on why you should hire me. Ended up running HubSpot Labs under Dharmesh Shah, HubSpot's co-founder. Stayed at HubSpot for a while, had my own startup after that. And then earlier this year, around June, I get an email from Dharmesh again saying, hey, I want to build the first ever professional network for artificial intelligences. Do you think you can get to 100,000 weekly active users by inbound? Inbound is September, 3 months after I'm getting this email. We did it. We got to 156,000 weekly active users. And so having started my kind of tech career, working with Dharmesh Shah, going through a few other companies, launching my own, exiting last year, spent the first half of this year doing research, and now I'm back with Dharmesh again. It's awesome.
It's a full circle. It's a full circle. Tell me a little more about the cigar and whiskey selling. I mean, selling vices is a lot more easier than selling products. Why did you get into SaaS products and not, continue on your journey on cigars and whiskeys and bourbons and whatnot?
Yeah, a lot of it is, I tend to be extremely competitive, and I do tend to be very curious. And the folks at HubSpot were good at things that I didn't even know that they were better than me at things I didn't even know I was supposed to be good at. So I hadn't heard about customer acquisition costs and unit economics and conversion rate optimization, all the math behind, the fuzziness of marketing and sales, kind of before I started engaging with their content. And when I saw that, the internet could be so much more, business could be so much more, and because of that, my career could be so much more. There's a reason that I was a faculty chair at the school I dropped out of, was because they weren't teaching mobile and social and all this other kind of stuff back then. So I was able to create a competitive advantage for myself. So that's really my story of why I got into it, is because it was such an interesting gap, kind of like today, right? As you're coming out of college right now, your professors and boss and the CEO of the company that you got your internship at, none of them know any more about AI than you do, which creates a unique opportunity for people starting in their career.
Yeah, it creates, I think, an equilibrium. Everyone is almost at the same level, which means that nobody can essentially say, I'm the big boss and I know everything, right? Except for maybe some of these larger AI LLM companies who've been building the platforms. And I think even they don't know the applicability of it, right? They can just build the platforms. They just don't know how it can be used.
That's my favorite story of the last few years. Google got sucker punched by a nonprofit research team. Obviously now they're raising billions and they're doing all this stuff at OpenAI. But if Google is the 800-pound gorilla in that industry, can get sucker punched by somebody who didn't raise $100 billion, kind of to begin with, then whoever's the 800-pound gorilla, like whoever's listening to this, whoever's the 800-pound gorilla in your industry is probably much more fightable than you would have thought previously.
Very true. Thank goodness we didn't, I didn't keep my speakers very loud. One of my neighbors works at DeepMind and Google's DeepMind, and he didn't hear that. But you're so right. People who are building AI, and that's going to be our topic today, more or less. People who are building AI do not yet understand the power of AI, which is why there's a swarm of companies that's coming up, which are verticalized, using AI for a very specific purpose. And they are mushrooming like crazy. I live here in Seattle. I see at least about maybe 400 or 500 AI companies. Every meetup that happens in AWS headquarters here or Azure headquarters here, which is hardly about 10 miles from where I live, every Thursdays, Wednesdays, I go in there. 300 companies are coming in, every week talking about AI for manufacturing, AI for environmental science, AI for nuclear reactors, so many verticalized, things. So I'm very curious about your journey into AI, and maybe we can segue into what is agent.ai. If you can tell me a little more about what's the concept of agent.ai, what's the larger applicability? How did you go from this whole thing about there can be a convergence in AI and sales and marketing, but yet you started off with various agents. So tell me the story about the origins of agent.ai and what it does today, or what you think it might potentially do in the future.
Yeah, so agent.ai is kind of tackling the problem from two different directions. One is, love the folks at Microsoft, Salesforce, everybody else. They're building these AI agent studios mostly for the enterprise. So they cost a lot of money. They're very powerful. They require specialized skills to use. And in true kind of HubSpot style, the question was, can we democratize the ability to create your own AI agents? So agent.ai is free. First of all, it's its own strong value proposition, but it's also very easy to use. So any non-technical person can go in and build an AI agent of their own or customize one that somebody else has built. But that actually also creates the other problem that we have to solve, which is the discoverability of AI agents. The reason I joke with the team, the reason we're agent.ai and not agent.io, what's the AI in agent.ai? Our AI's job is to know you really well and your job and your competitors and your company and just your stylistic preferences, et cetera. And then based on what you're trying to do, it will help you find agents in the network, in the marketplace, feed those agents the appropriate context, and help you accomplish the task that you're trying to accomplish. So it's very much the democratization angle. Can we make it so that anyone, regardless of barriers to entry for cost or technical skill, can create and customize AI agents? And conversely, anyone, regardless of budget and skill, can discover and use AI agents. I think if we solve both of those problems, that'll be pretty interesting.
But with the context, right? You mentioned about something and that piques my interest. So can I assume that agent.ai over time can become like a marketplace of all these AI agents, which is very well aware of who you are, what are your needs based on how you're working with agents? And when you're connecting each of the other agents, you're passing on the context from whoever is searching on agent, you're passing on that context. So which means that you don't have to feed a lot more context, which means that potentially, you will be able to go connect the buyers and the sellers. And the buyers might have a context and the sellers might have a context. And these agents that you're talking about can become an enabler of connecting them on the context of the buyer itself. Is that how you have the vision about, this whole marketplace evolving around agents?
Yeah, that's exactly the strategy. We don't build agents. I mean, we do for fun. I built like a chess coach agent for myself, and someone else built like a Dungeons and Dragons agent. But like, we're not the team that builds agents. We build the platform that lets people build agents and then lets people monetize agents or distribute agents for free. And you talked about earlier, you talked about how people are building like AI focused on XYZ or focused on, whatever. It reminds me so much of, you remember when everybody wanted to be Uber for X? Right? I want to be Uber for laundry. I want to be Uber for pet sitting, etc. It worked for that model because it was focused, right? Like the quality of provider and the context of the questions that you were asking to say, who am I going to match buyers and sellers? You could do that. Very much the same with AI. Everybody's talking about artificial general intelligence, and that's like a thing for those listening. It's kind of the idea that any computer can do any task as well as any human. I still think we're a bit away from that because even humans can't do every task as good as every human.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you're better at some stuff than I am, and vice versa. As opposed to being able to have an AI that you can customize for your use case. So like if you go to agent.ai, you'll see there's like a bunch of different flavors of company research agents that people have customized. because maybe you're a financial services company and the one that somebody built for SaaS, B2B SaaS sales reps, like is okay, but not like perfect for you. So it really is that ability to like take those building blocks. I'm still working on good metaphors here, so we'll see how this tests, but almost more like the farmer's market, right? The really great ingredients, and then being able to use agents in sequence, feed them the context that they need so that they can do really good work and do it fast on your behalf and not get this like super mediocre. Like by definition, AI is average. It's really good at being mediocre at doing stuff. And the more focused you make it, the better it's going to be.
I like that analogy of the farmer's market. By the way, to the listeners, typically the housemen, whoever is building the platform and connecting the farmers to the buyers, the most money that anyone makes is the house. And I love your idea that if you build that marketplace and you build it appropriately with the context of the buyers and the sellers, and you're connecting them, even though you're offering this for free, you're essentially become a bi-directional marketplace. The buyers can pay you, the sellers can pay you, and you can take a fee, just like what AWS marketplace or Azure marketplace does. You can take a small fee in connecting the two.
If the rising tide raises all boats, we want to build the canals between lakes.
Well, that's good. Maybe we'll start off with the broader context, right? I know Dharmesh talks about it, and you've written about it. You have a LinkedIn instructor page on the state of AI in sales, how you can use it in sales, how you can use it in marketing. Could you paint a picture of where is generally the applicability of AI? And I think you and I, we connected, sometime earlier, and we hit off on a topic that the bigger companies are not innovating, right? They are stuck, which is why companies like HubSpot, if you can go build an innovation lab or growth lab as a separate unit by itself, that will drive a lot more innovation than the primal HubSpot, which is selling, marketing, CRM, all of that. Tell me, is that the state of affairs for every large company that you have talked to, that the broader market, the bigger companies are not innovating enough in the space of AI, except for the platform players, but they are essentially a follower in a trend, and it's going to take a long time for them to essentially start adopting it?
Yeah, so my favorite metaphor for this actually is if you remember IBM's Project Chess way back in the day, this is the company whose CEO said the world had a market for maybe 5 or 6 computers. And then in 1 year, they rolled out the IBM PC. They did it by carving out a team of like really talented people,
Yeah.
shipping them to the middle of nowhere, Florida, where I live, telling them they didn't have to follow any of the IBM rules. They didn't have to be vertically integrated or anything else like that. And it's the only reason they're still around as a company today is because mainframes and stuff like that was not going to be their business. And really large companies, kind of out of necessity, move slowly. Like I remember when we reached a point where not every HubSpot employee had super admin access to every HubSpot portal because, there was one time when I first joined HubSpot, somebody redirected HubSpot.com, no joke, to their mother's like bakery website. And we had it fixed in like, 20 minutes or something like that. But now they're a $40 billion company. 20 minutes of downtime is a lot of money lost. And so like these companies put in these guardrails because they have to. And when you're small and you're fast, like I keep going back. If you remember Game of Thrones, there's this great quote that chaos is a ladder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're on the top of a ladder, you want it to stay nice and stable. And so if you're at the bottom of the ladder, you want to shake it, right? You want to create opportunity. And going back to like Google got sucker punched by a nonprofit research firm, the larger the company is, the less likely, especially in this era. Remember, we're doing this at the same time as cash is no longer free. So you can no longer just like burn cash for the sake of burning cash. Companies are feeling a lot of like pressure to be more efficient at the same time as they're having to invest in something that is inherently inefficient, which is innovation, and much faster, right? Like digital transformation, you had kind of like 20 years to figure it out before. If you didn't have a website, you were dead as a company. You have like 20 months to figure out how AI is going to be kind of like a force multiplier for your company, for your brand, or just for you professionally. So faster, agile, independent is the way to go when you're thinking about how do you adopt AI right now.
So maybe let's double down on that particular part, right? So you mentioned cash is not free, and the trends in the market are growth at all costs is not the flavor of the month or flavor of this year, right? VCs are not, selling out the dry powder as much as, as they did in 2021, 2022. How can, maybe let's take an example of maybe a smaller startup versus a mid-sized startup and a larger startup, a larger company. A mid-sized startup who's growing 20-30% year on year, right, has at least about 50-60 million ARR, and they're seeing growth starting to taper down. From what you're mentioning, if they were to go take your direction, they will have to essentially go build an innovation team that sits aside of the current sales and marketing team to go on the current growth at all cost strategy. So they are doubling down on sales, doubling down on marketing. They're spending more and more money in reaching out to the customers. And now what you're telling them is continue doing that, okay, because that's where the growth is coming in, and and start building some kind of an innovation lab on the side. They don't have money for the current sales and marketing. Now you're asking them go build something new, which is you don't have an ROI planner for that. Just go make a bet on something that doesn't exist. So your advice of who should do the innovation, is it only for the larger companies, or is it only for mid-sized companies because they can go faster, essentially cut down on the existing budgets, move your budgets and start building the innovation labs, and as you mentioned, or just acquire? How do our listeners maybe read between the lines on your advice there?
So thankfully for most of us, it's only the big companies that have to do that. I think Deloitte calls it the organizational immune system. I call it institutional inertia. Like, it's just once you reach a certain size, it's designed to kill things that don't fit in the host organism. When you're smaller, you don't have to do that. So there's a concept called Dunbar's number, which is the maximum number of stable relationships somebody can have. Once teams start expanding beyond that, kind of 150 people on maybe your sales team or your marketing team, then you have to start putting in all these processes. It's not that you have to get rid of trust, but you definitely have to create like alignment and controls to prevent things from going horribly wrong. So it's actually only the bigger companies that need to create dedicated innovation labs. The smaller companies, because we can have these tighter social interactions, there's not so much noise in the communication that I can't follow everything happening in Slack or email, et cetera. Then you can kind of decentralize innovation and let individual people figure it out. So if you're a 40 million ARR company, there is 18 months ago, there was some sales rep at your company using ChatGPT and just not telling you about it. So how do you fix that culture and make it so that all the decentralized innovation gets shared and fed amongst everybody? It's not something that's really feasible in a very large social structure like a large enterprise. It's eminently feasible in a much smaller company. And then the other thing too is like AI kind of inherently, what it does is it gives all of us access to capabilities that we wouldn't otherwise have had, or would need somebody else for. Right? So I can write basic code without having to bother the engineering team, even though I told you when we first connected, I haven't written consumer-facing code since ASP.NET was new, but I can still write have ChatGPT help me, code, or have Claude help me code. I can do cash flow forecasting. The engineers can do graphic design, but only at a very basic, mediocre level. But what that means is that the manpower advantage of larger organizations is not as significant, because every person at your company has, if we think of the T-shaped professional, they've got their area of specialization, but the kind of roof of the T has gotten much wider. You can have sales reps doing advanced data analytics to figure out who they should talk to without having that go to a RevOps team that then goes to a business enablement team, et cetera. So I definitely think this favors the small and mid-sized companies significantly more than it favors the very large companies, which is why I think we see the very large companies struggling with it.
So let me boil this down to what you just mentioned. So for mid-sized to smaller companies, instead of you institutionalizing a new department, saying that, hey, this is a new innovation lab, you enable the individual performers, the ICs on the ground, could be a sales rep, could be a developer, to use AI to accelerate your productivity. Right? For a sales guy, it might be use AI to reach more people. For the developer, it might be use AI to get more product released at a much faster rate and stuff like that. It could be marketing, build positioning, build experimentations, build these things much faster than what you could have done with humans. So in that case, what you're saying is don't use AI as an innovation lab, as a separate department, but percolate it down to at the individual level, encourage them to be able to do that. Is that the status quo in the market, or people think of this as like a department? I'll give an analogy, right? Because we are going through this motion where when cloud came into being first, right? There was a department for, hey, you guys go figure out how to look for the cloud. Go build apps using cloud. So there would be the new apps or something that were getting created. They could potentially use the benefits of the cloud. When mobile came in, very, very similar to that. The newer set of things will go on to that, but the existing ones or the old ones will continue on the same path journey as it is. Now with the advent of AI, are you seeing that? that the newer things will go onto AI. The existing stuff will remain the same. Case in point, IBM had to go create a PC, which is the innovation thing, but they did not change how mainframes work for a very, very long time. Even now, it's probably the same as the good old 80-year-old mainframes that you'd have. Microsoft had to go create an online BPOS or Exchange Online, but they couldn't go change the DNA of the current Exchange server team that they had. Salesforce had to go create a new agent framework on top, but they could not build that on top of the force.com. So it's now completely, slightly orthogonal to it. So is that what is happening? Something on the side, something separately, or percolated down to the individuals to use it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And again, for the larger companies, you probably do need to take that kind of methodical change management approach to things. For the smaller companies, you don't have to do that, because I always love to tell the story. Back in the day at HubSpot, we had this thing where once a quarter, every employee could give just $100 bonus to any other employee at the company to thank you. And an illustration of how small teams are always more innovative, the marketing team was like 9 people at the time, and we just passed it amongst ourselves and then went and had like a whiskey tasting night once a month, which is not what that was intended to do. Right. And at a larger organization, they probably would have followed the rules and done what they were supposed to. But when you're part of a smaller organization, you can be more agile. And in terms of the old stuff versus the new stuff, that's my big gripe with how people are using AI right now, is we're being very lazy about it. It's really a question right now of how can I use AI to do the stuff I was already going to do anyways. So write more sales emails, write more blog articles. Maybe we're doing it at a greater volume than we were before when we were doing it all manually. And maybe we're doing it, slightly more customized than when we were doing it manually. But I think that is not where it's going to be really interesting. And I was thinking about this with some support teams that we were talking to. If you can make it so that a single live chat rep can go from managing 3 concurrent conversations to managing, say, 30, because you're feeding them context and using the AI agent to help them. Well, that either means that you can have 1/10 the number of support reps, which is the big company answer, or it means that you can have a 10 times greater level of human insight, involvement, relationship building, and context for every chat interaction that you have. And the latter answer, I think, is much more interesting. So can your live chat agents access real-time information about the industry of the customer they're talking to, and do all that other kind of stuff? So I think it's quite a lazy answer what we're doing right now, which is how do I take what we're currently doing and just be like, hey, somebody else go do this and I'll go play chess all day, versus what new capabilities can be created if I don't have to spend all day writing blog articles and doing all that other kind of stuff. And I have access to skills I didn't have to master. Both of those things being true, I think it's the people who do the value additive stuff and do the new stuff with it that are going to do the really interesting things. Otherwise, it's just a cost cutting thing.
Yeah. So maybe let's maybe dip ourselves into 1 or 2 areas, right? So maybe, the state of AI in sales, maybe let's talk about that, or the state of AI in marketing. And I know you have a deep experience in doing both of them. What is the trend that you think is in the market? I know there's a whole bunch of things about AI does not replace people, but people with AI would have a better chance. And all of those things are coming through. Maybe share your thoughts on where is the AI in sales happening? What do you think should have happened? But they're still taking the lazy route. And the same is the case with state of AI in marketing.
Yeah, I find that a very interesting but incomplete quote when people say that, AI is not going to take your job, but somebody using AI is going to take your job. If you just take a step back and think about how the AI is trained, it observed a bunch of stuff. Sales reps sending emails, marketers writing blog articles, social media posts, etc., and then figured out how to kind of like be average at that. And if that's all you want, right, is like, I'm doing the stuff that I was before, I can just like now do it at greater scale or faster. And everyone else is doing the exact same thing. SEO is just like wrecked at this point, between search generative results not sending traffic to people, and the fact that every startup on the planet is cranking out 2,000 blog articles a month. Outbound sales, I don't even read LinkedIn email messages anymore, because
gotten very crazy.
Even if they're arguably better and more customized to me and more interesting to me, each individual message is more interesting to me today than any message was to me 2 years ago. But now all of them are equally interesting, which means you don't really get the ability to stand out. So if that is being mediocre is your career strategy, you probably need to rethink your career goals. If figuring out how to communicate more effectively and again do things that you didn't have the ability to do. If you're willing to put in that effort with the free time that you have because it's doing all the mundane tasks, I think that's a huge advantage. So as an example, I have a friend who a couple weeks ago I was texting with him, and I've been doing AI long enough now that unless you specifically ask it to adopt a voice, I can generally tell. Like it's got kind of that neutral voice we can all tell. And I asked him, like, are you having AI write your text messages? And he said he was, because he's got some learning and communication disabilities. And he was using it to help synthesize his thoughts and customize the text messages he was sending to me to the way that I like to receive communication. Whereas historically, he would just send me like 5,000 words and I'd have to like extract what he's trying to say. So you can use AI to be inauthentic at scale, right? And so I think what everybody's initial reaction was to it. Or you can put the extra effort in and say, how do I use it to communicate better, be more thoughtful and considerate of people's time, waste less of my time? I think that those are going to be the winners. Because if you're just, what is it? If you do what everyone else does, you'll get whatever everyone else gets. And yeah, there's a lot of unemployed people. So I don't think you want to do that.
What would you advise? So I think you mentioned about spam, right? In the sales world, I think very very similar to my mailbox, my LinkedIn messages. Yours might be also the same, right? So I'm getting somewhere in the ballpark of 150 to 200 odd messages a day on LinkedIn now, and they are timed in such a way that between 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m., my specific time, I'm getting a lot of these messages, and after that, it slows down. So it looks like this. People are essentially using AI engines to figure out what's my availability when I'm generally on LinkedIn, or what's the best time that people read. And then you get a barrage of messages at that time. Same is the case with my mailbox. Thankfully, I have the focused mailbox and the other mailbox, and much of that is going to the others. But when I open up others, I don't even want to go look into the others. Right? It's like so much of it. In a day's time, I'm getting somewhere in the ballpark of people selling me. I'm a startup, right? So people are selling me, hey, do you want to increase your revenue? Do you want to do this? Convert X, get more customers by doing this. Product companies, services company, they're all reaching out. What would you recommend that should change in this market so that me as a buyer would have more attention to it, or me as a seller would get the attention of the buyer? Because clearly, whatever is happening now, it's not working. It's actually generating a lot more spam.
Yeah. So there's two things. One is if you can get those kinds of insights as to when are people being barraged, don't show up then. I still remember we had our small business team at HubSpot, and this took us a while to bother to do this analysis, which we should have thought of earlier. But for small businesses, leads that came in between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. converted much higher than the ones that came in during the normal business hours where we actually had sales reps available. And in retrospect, it's very obvious because if you're Googling blogs and filling out landing pages at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, are you like really a good small business that has budget to buy a HubSpot subscription? And so we actually rebalanced the sales team to focus on the mornings and the evenings for those people, so we could be present in a time when they weren't being barraged by customers and everybody else who was calling them. So that's point number one. If everybody's coming between 9:30 and 11, don't go then. The other thing is, again, going back to the capability enhancements that we have. You can create videos without having to go to a video department. You can create graphics, etc. When I never expected the hiremehubspot.com thing to work. I actually just kind of thought somebody else would see it and find it intriguing and give me a job. But because I didn't have a college degree, because I didn't really have experience, because I knew that it wasn't going to work, it really freed me up to like try something new. And I think we're going to see people doing that now. Like if you do what everyone else does, these LinkedIn messages, it's not really going to work. A custom landing page and custom video and really deep analytics on, why I should care about this. Like the ability to expand beyond just the initial message of like, hey, I'm also an entrepreneur, let's connect. And then, oh, I saw that you do this. Like, I also do this. Would you like me to pay? Do you have 20 minutes to like talk to me about XYZ? It's like that formula is so inauthentic versus can you let your teams just go do other things? Like, yes, there are startups that are doing this now, like the customized videos and things like that, but it's still most people are doing the spam approach, right? At scale. Not many people are doing the like very valuable, give me an analysis of my industry's like competitive landscape and explain to me how talking to you and your solution will give me a competitive advantage for my company in my landscape is something you would never have had the time or data to do 5 years ago. That you can now do. So don't show up to a party and all go talk to the same person at the same time, but also be the person with the red hat on, right? And like just do something that's unique and value additive that you didn't have the ability to do before.
So you still think that outbound? I know Dharmesh says this a lot of times, and his entire team used to say this, that outbound over time is going to be, see a downturn, right? In general, the open rates are going to be lower and lower every year, and that is what is happening. Inbound apparently seems to be working great, but for inbound to work, you still need to do a lot of outbound. It's a cycle that you can't really come out of it.
So one of the, among several good things of not being an actual HubSpot employee, is I am not bound by like what they want us to say about inbound versus outbound. They created an enemy for the purposes of differentiating themselves.
Right.
Right. So just like Salesforce did with no software to launch kind of the SaaS revolution, a great way to explain what you are is by explaining what you aren't relative to what people already know. And hey, listen, my house is called Casa de IPO for a reason. We all did very well off of selling inbound. But I think that the real philosophy of inbound is it interesting? Is it value accretive? Is it useful? Are you giving value before you're asking for it? Like that's where people fail with outbound. It's like, whoever you're listening to right now, I could probably just show me your website. I could call leads right now. Just like, hey, this is Sam from XYZ Corp. Just wanting to see if you're considering any of these new initiatives. This Corp. Like everybody's doing that, right? But if I get that voicemail and we read the transcripts of the voicemail, I don't even listen to voicemail anymore. But fine, you got my phone number. You bought my phone number off ZoomInfo, something like that. You left me a voicemail. You'll get 1.5 seconds of my time as I skim it to make sure it's not my mother or my doctor or something like that. And if in it looks like a script that I've seen before, I'm not going to watch that movie. But if in it you're saying stuff that is legitimately interesting and it's value additive, I mean, you and I got connected, right? Like you can get connected to people as long as you're giving them something that's interesting. I mean, I did PPC, right? Like targeting HubSpot employees to register for the free webinar on why you should hire me. It wasn't the ads that made that effective. It was kind of the novelty of somebody trying to get you to register for a free webinar and why you should hire them that made it interesting and got me a response.
Yeah, I think it's the novelty, it's the surprise element, that catches your attention a lot more than, the regular same old coming through your mailbox. So let me maybe jump into some quick fire questions. So here's a couple of them. And I know you and I have not prepped on that, so it's going to be slightly surprising. If you have to rate the 3 or 4 questions that I'm going to ask you into a range of things, something like the format would be, I'll ask you, where would you use this? Either in a fast selling, low priced sales market, or a slow selling, high value, takes a long time to close kind of a market, right? So both ends of the spectrum. So my first question is AI SDR. On the continuum or the spectrum of things, is it on the left side of the spectrum, fast moving, or is it on the right hand side of the spectrum, slow moving, high value, takes a long time to close? Would you use AI SDR if you have a product, either of these?
I think for most of the AI questions, it's going to be the lower LTV, lower price point, faster cycle things, because a high LTV can hide a lot of sins, right? Like a human being can be involved in that process and you can get away with a lot of inefficiency. When you need a high volume of fast, low value transactions, and that's kind of the only time you're going to get away with automation, right? Like sales reps will call me, e-commerce companies will send me nurturing emails. If a sales rep's sending me a nurturing email, they're not even going to get into my inbox.
Okay. Let me go to the next one. Product-led growth. Is it fast moving, fast sales, immediate value versus the other way around?
You're not going to like this answer. I think the answer is it actually is both, because for the fast, small, again, you don't have to have the sales rep involved. But I think the trend in enterprise sales has very much been the land and expand approach, which is what PLG is really, really good at. When we decided to go toe-to-toe with Salesforce and launch the CRM, everything else like that, the one thing I knew for sure is we weren't going to fight Salesforce by selling to the VP of sales. We were going to fight Salesforce by selling to the individual sales reps and kind of growing within the organization, creating problems that the sales leadership then had to solve. So I think that they're both the same for different reasons. They're both still highly applicable, which is, can you do a bottoms-up approach in an enterprise motion? Or if it's a high volume, high frequency motion, that's kind of the core of your motion. Interestingly, my first book that I published was called How to Sell Better Than Amazon. the whole premise, so you don't have to buy it, is that Amazon had to be the everything store. So they had to educate everybody on everything, which was not feasible. They were just mediocre at educating on anything. So if you were verticalized, like my first CMO job was cheaphumidors.com. We sold cigar humidors cheaply, but we really good at that content. And we could be better at that than Amazon ever could be. Now Amazon, with that fast cycle, low value, can create that kind of educational experience at scale. So the premise of my book from 15 years ago is actually no longer valid.
Okay, interesting. Let me ask the third question. Hybrid GTM, or the combination of product-led sales and human-led sales. Is it for everyone, or is it only for the big companies, especially who are doing the high ACVs and all of that?
It's definitely for everyone. I would argue it actually favors the SMBs more than the enterprise, because again, with the enterprise, you can get away with, having the human SDRs and the human sales reps and like a solutions engineering team and everything else like that. For the SMBs, you don't really have that luxury. But how do you create that kind of human experience, that human value constituted sales process at scale? You can't do that with purely PLG. At least I haven't really seen anybody who's done that perfectly with pure PLG. I like the human on the loop approach, not human in the loop, where like the sales rep has to approve everything. It's more like if your website's talking to a customer and the AI chatbot is talking to them, and your human might pop in on occasion when the AI can't answer their questions. So like last time I did an analysis, like 40% of HubSpot support queries, the answer was in the documentation.
Yeah.
AI can handle that. But then bring in the human for what the AI can't do. That hybrid approach, I mean, I think it's the only way. I don't think people who choose only one way or the other are going to be successful long term.
Okay, wonderful. One last question. In 2 years from now, will AI replace or reduce humans being deployed primarily in sales and marketing? I'll tell you why I'm asking this. Most public companies or even mid-sized companies, they spend about more than 50% of their budget on sales and marketing. Would you assume that in a couple of years' time, maybe 1 or 2 years, maybe be faster than that, would you see the sales and marketing budget go down with less humans? Or is it still going to remain the same, but now they're replacing the humans with the tool sets?
Yeah, I don't think the fundamental unit economics of acquisition and monetization are what's changing. I think you'll still see that percentage being spent because you can afford to. We don't really get a ton of brownie points for issuing dividends, kind of thing, right? You can return stakeholder value either in dividends or in increasing the value of the stock. It's generally easier to do the latter, especially with sales and marketing, especially if you don't want to stagnate and get disrupted. The things that really interest me are, one, if you replace all the junior sales reps, where do the senior sales reps come from? So like, this is a startup somebody else should build. Feel free to steal this idea. It's hard to replace actual sales reps being human in the process. It's really easy to replace sales prospects. So somebody needs to build an AI agent that simulates a prospect and lets sales reps practice on that so that they can get the skills they need kind of long term. And it's the same thing with marketing, right? Like all of business historically has been about this like regression to the mean. So you couldn't build a bespoke SaaS solution. Like HubSpot didn't build for one customer. Wistia doesn't build for one customer. HBO doesn't build for one customer. But now we're getting closer to that, right? Where we used to write, the e-commerce guide to marketing, ebook download kind of thing. Now it's the like cigar humidor e-commerce guide to marketing on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can get incredibly specific with generative AI. One, being very respectful of people's time, creating that value, and two, just being more effective at the content that you're creating. So I don't think you have two choices. You can either save the penny saved is the penny earned, fine, like just have 1/10 the number of people if it 10x is an average person's output, or more likely keep the economics roughly the same, and fight in some of these new spaces. When your sales reps have the ability to write code and do design and generate videos and do advanced data analysis, whether they know it or not, that creates a competitive advantage for you. So I think the inclination is to do the cuts, right? Have less money being spent. But I think that is a short-term mentality. That's an overreaction to interest rates rising and is not going to be the winning formula long-term.
So you're saying that the CAC is going to pretty much remain the same no matter what you do. You can probably augment, some of your prospecting or even outsource that prospecting through AI, SDR, or something of that sort. But the actual sales reps who are having the conversations with the customers, they will still have to be real, human, trained, in your product, trained in your processes and everything. So you can't really replace them. is the prospecting that you can replace. Is that what you're saying?
It's the expectation of the prospects themselves are going to increase, right? Like every time we do something, it just becomes the new norm. And people expect, that's just how things are. And so it's going to go from, okay, fine, like you were selling to the CMO. 2 years from now, the CMO is going to expect you to also help them sell to the CFO, to the CEO, help them do implementation for their team. And you're not going to have any more people or resources. You're still like one sales rep managing this account, but the expectations of the prospect are going to be much, much greater. And so if you cut and just like keep everybody's bandwidth the same, they're not going to be able to deliver on what I think are going to be the baseline expectations that people are going to have moving forward.
Yeah. So I know this podcast would have been very heavy for many of the listeners. We've talked about so fast about so many AI related things. We'll try to usually close it with some kind of closing fun note. Maybe Sam, if you could share one or two incidents, short ones, of course, on where you've seen failures happening on the AI space, failures in prospecting, like real failures, which like really bomb.
So again, AI is it's like an intern. You may be fresh out of MIT Sloan with your fancy MBA. You're still not hitting send on the email campaign without me looking at it if you're an intern. AI is still very much the same. There's a sense where hallucination can be innovation, but hallucination is also just very inauthentic. So you need to be on the loop with it. You can neither ignore AI, nor can you defer all of your responsibility to AI, because the prospects can be able to tell.
Yeah, interesting. Now I'll share mine. My wedding anniversary was about 3 weeks back, and I started getting messages congratulating on my wedding anniversary, which was nowhere I had kept it other than Facebook. So some reason Facebook showed up. It was not on LinkedIn, but I would get messages on my LinkedIn congratulating on my wedding anniversary and trying to sell a completely different product which has nothing to do with my wedding anniversary. So the context setting and the personalization was probably done by AI, and the actual selling was done, which is the same old.
I'm getting all these messages right now of like, congratulations on your anniversary working at LinkedIn. I don't actually work for LinkedIn. One time made a course for LinkedIn Learning, but it is on my LinkedIn profile. And every person who says like, hey, we'd love to give you this service, here at LinkedIn or whatever, or like, congratulations on your work anniversary at LinkedIn. Now let me try and sell you something. I immediately know I'm not going to listen to you.
No, that's so true. Well, Sam, I enjoyed this conversation. I hope our listeners did as well. So thank you so much for your time. We'll have the show notes, the transcripts and everything ready. How can someone, if they want to reach out to you, how should they reach out to you?
The good news is with my last name, if you Google anything, even close to it, you'll generally find me. But also, we did just launch a community at agent.ai, community.agent.ai. It'll be linked in the nav also if you just go to the website. We're not pretending we know all the answers and know all the future. Like, I'm not that dumb anymore. I used to be. And so that's where we're all trying to get together and share content and information. So if you have something you want to say or questions based on anything that we've talked about, join the community. You can talk to me, you can talk to Dharmesh, you can talk to all of us.
Wonderful. So team community.agent.ai, search for Not the Dumb Sam. There could be other Sams as well, but he might have a handle avatar called Not the Dumb Sam. Again, just kidding. So thank you so much for your time.